just have your back. Don't look back. Give all the dollars, you know, a fake heart attack. 'Cause you were made for this. You can feel it inside your bones. You were made for this, and it's time you let the world know who you are, what you know, what's happening right now. So
Alright, stop. Well, thank you. Who are you?
I'm still Stefan from Rocket Internet. Nothing has changed in the last hour. So, no.
So can you tell me a little bit, for all of us to understand, what's your role at Rocket Internet? What do you do now, as opposed to what did you do before?
So when we started Rocket Internet, the incubator here in the region, it was literally setting up everything from opening the office, of buying furniture to buying printers. So that was exciting. But then kind of the first co-founder, when we launched Zalora, we launched in Lazada, a second venture, Food Panda, and so forth along the chain. So I'm always then with the new teams, the new founders. Businesses, and then we built IT. We provide everything, the legal advice, all the systems, the back-end systems, and then we look for the best entrepreneurs to build up the business together with us. So they become owners of the business as well, but we are not leaving kind of after 3 months, but we build this together until we exit the business.
And you're mostly looking at e-commerce to incubate or grow and to kind of tap into your infrastructure, or how does that?
Yeah, so historically that has been the core focus, simply because e-commerce is one of, you look at the largest internet business model that existed over the last, short of 20 years, and obviously e-commerce is one of the biggest categories within the internet. So we have historically had our most focus on that, but we also built different businesses in the payment space, for example.
So now you're not in the operational side of things at Rocket anymore, but you set up like Lazada, Zalora across all the countries and hired all the MDs and stuff like that. So can you tell us how did you do? How does the launch work? The first 4 weeks. What is that like? From the moment, one of our editors asked, from the moment that the MD lands from the airplane from Europe or from wherever, and then for the first 4 weeks, 6 weeks, how does that go?
Well, it was certainly like more chaotic at the very beginning, because like the story of Rocket Internet, we globalized really like at the same time. So we went into 40 countries. So we went from being a German company out of Berlin to really being like a global incubator, and we kind of executed.
A lot of money, with a lot of money too. Immediately, like $1 billion.
We needed some change money to finance that, yeah. So it's, just like the kind of speed of like the global rollout, I think is quite unique. I haven't really seen it with any other company doing that before. So yes, there have been like a lot of things where if we would have had more time or could have thought through things, we would have probably done a bit slower. So at the beginning was, more chaotic. Now the whole incubation is set up. So if we launch now a new venture, we have all the processes in place. We know how to set up the legal entity. Everything is pretty smooth compared to, when we built up the incubator 2 years ago. So obviously at the time, we had grand ambitions from day one. So when people landed at the airport, the first things they had to do was recruit people, very clearly, bring on brands on board. So, the most of the first things you do in starting up.
And has that, well, we'll talk about one of the, you expanded very fast, so there must have been a lot of pitfalls. So has that worked? Like, so you guys have a reputation for bringing in quite expensive expats into a local market, and do these expats, do they understand the local market? And how can they, as compared to like a local entrepreneur who understands the culture, the market, they know how to adapt. and you have most of the development right in Germany.
Yeah. So this is very different today than it was 2 years ago when we started up, because we globalized, everywhere, literally, Bangladesh, Myanmar, your markets you probably wouldn't right away associate with going into. So we had like a pool of around 250 what we called global venture developers. So yes, they were mostly expats and coming from certain schools in the US, and they worked at the same consulting houses and banks. So we had like a huge pool of these global venture developers, which were very flexible. But we just needed them to set up everything. But the longer we take, like these global venture developers have ultimately turned into founders, all across the world. Others have left and started their own businesses. But now we have a much, much higher proportion of local people. But at the time, we just needed to set up everything. So I think that was the right approach we had at the time. But we localize much, much more. So if I look at some of the largest venture, like even Zalora Indonesia, I think as an example, I think we have 3 expats and 210 local people. So I think the perception that it's you just have all the expats coming in, it's not the case anymore.
And so who's the best managing director in Asia? Name names. Can you name names?
They're all great.
What about the best country for Rocket Internet that you've seen in terms of performance in Lazada, Zalora, whatever?
No, like saying like that's the best performing country is hard to assess. But obviously, like if you look at Southeast Asia, Singapore with a population of 5 million is very different than Indonesia with 250, 270 million. So it's just very different markets. But obviously Indonesia is the key market. So most of our investors invest in it because they actually really want to have exposure of Indonesia. So if I really look on a global scale, I would say India, Brazil, Indonesia, then Russia are probably our most important markets where we spend the most money. So here in the region, Indonesia has like 40% of the population of Southeast Asia, so it gets maybe a little bit more attention than others.
And also you guys are not just doing e-commerce, right? I understand you guys did like a Pinterest clone and other kind of, and a photo app, but those weren't so successful. So why is it that e-commerce is, I hope that's true, why is it that e-commerce is in your DNA, whereas when you enter into social media, I mean, earlier you were talking about e-commerce versus social media, right? So why is it? What is it about your DNA with our, the Samwer brothers or whatever?
Yeah, so you have to, certainly learned along the way that obviously e-commerce is a local thing. You need to have the local merchants, set up the local customer team, customer service team. So it's a very local story. If you look at social networks, WhatsApp and so forth, Pinterest, Instagram, you can build this with 10 people, anywhere in the world, and you can globalize it wherever you are in the world. So e-commerce just has this thing that obviously you need to have a strong local presence. That's why these models have obviously worked much better for Rocket Internet with that approach. Some other models like social networks, if you're the second one, it's difficult because you have the network effect and so forth. So I guess we learned a lot from earlier.
So you stopped looking into those kind of social media kind of stuff, focused more on e-commerce now then. How do you guys assess when to close? Like how many sites have you guys opened up since you guys started in Asia? Do you know?
In Indonesia?
In Asia.
In Asia?
Yeah.
Well, so right now we have 7 active ventures.
And how many have you shut down since?
Well, we have shut down like Office Fab, so like selling office equipment online was one of the ventures where we closed down after I think 7 or 8 months after we started it.
And how'd you know that you were gonna close Office Fab? Like, What was, you were watching the numbers, what are your KPIs in order to see that?
No, we didn't get like the as any startup, we didn't get the financing round for the big growth, and a lot of people underestimate, and probably it shouldn't happen to us because we have so much experience, but e-commerce is just extremely capital intensive. If you buy the inventory, you have at some point, as you grow and grow, the working capital you need to finance the business grows with it. So you need quite a, that's why you have these huge funding rounds for Zalora, for Lazada and so forth. So it's just extremely capital intensive. For Office Fab, it was a shame because I think we had one of the best founding teams in Southeast Asia. So extremely good people. Plus the traction was also very good. So it's a shame, but ultimately we decided that we will not finance it further.
And is that kind of, so now you're getting more into acquiring local companies. Is that like a shift in strategy for you guys away from creating your own like Lazada, Zalora, and now you're like, okay, now we're going to go Traveloka? Is that because you realize that you cannot do these new ventures, or how does that work?
No, it's more complementary, things that we look for to invest in, and it's not that we would take them over. It's we will be a minority shareholder, and then support entrepreneurs with all the rocket infrastructure that we have to be as successful as possible. So we look at like online payments, because payments around the world in emerging markets, it's quite regulated. For a foreign investor to build it up ourselves and be the majority shareholder, in a lot of countries around the world that's not possible. So we would look to invest in them, because it's also in our interest to kind of grow the infrastructure within logistics, with payments, because that's still bottlenecks. So for all our ventures, we kind of benefit if the whole infrastructure is just developing much further. So we make investments there, or like Traveloka is a good example in the travel space. We haven't built anything in the travel space before, but we made a lot of investments in European travel startups. So that's a space where we'll probably be much more active in just investing in it instead of building it up ourselves.
So you might invest in a payments company you're thinking about.
Yeah, we're very interested, but the thing is, a lot of people realize how huge an opportunity like mobile payments will be, the whole payment space. So it's not that we really found out a secret here. So
yeah, it's really hard, right? This region. So I wonder about the whole, because you guys have a lot of, Rocket Internet has had huge success in Europe with City Deal, and you said Zalando, which is worth, how much you said? 5 billion? Yeah, 10 billion?
So Zalando is actually one of the few ventures where we actually now open up the numbers. So as a kind of Zalando is the German or the European version of Zalora here. So they are and they're profitable in the core markets. So quite a big success story.
And City Deal also grew really fast, right? 3 or 4 years as well, right?
That's right. So City Deal was the daily deal site that Rocket incubated at the time and then sold to Groupon.
So I mean, I'm skeptical that you're going to see that kind of growth in Asia, right? Because there's just so many. We were talking about payment, logistics, and stuff like that. Whereas Europe, you have a platform to grow all these business models on top of very easily. Whereas, are you going to see that kind of growth in Asia?
I actually disagree, because you have a lot of structural things about retail which is so much in the favor of e-commerce companies. In Europe and US, you have like an offline established retail channels. You have the Best Buys, which have built up brands for decades. But if you look what we've seen in China, you don't have these established retailers. So people kind of jump right from, to purchasing things online. They have actually never really gotten used to buy stuff in like local chains, electronic chains and so forth. So here is similar, like you don't have these massively established brands in the offline world. So this is our hypothesis, and I guess a lot of other people's as well, that we kind of see this jump that consumers for the first time will go straight and purchase things online. So there's a lot of like structural things in emerging markets, which is very, very much in the favor of e-commerce.
Yeah, but when is Lazada, right, going to get to a $10 billion valuation? You know?
Yeah.
Because one of the things I'm wondering is that, like Amazon last year, they are, the e-commerce king, right? In a lot of ways. And they lost $41 million last year, right? Even though they're the top. So, I don't know, is what you guys doing here in Asia, are you looking for an exit? And if so, is it going to be like 20 years from now? You know what I mean? And I don't know if I'll live that long, but, so what is the exit strategy there? How does it work?
No, but
is Amazon going to buy you in Asia? Is that the goal, or?
I probably would be surprised if that would happen. I think we have so many different ventures. So if you obviously talk about the largest ventures we built with Zalando in Europe, Jabong in India, Zalora, Lazada here, La Moda in Russia, Dafiti in Brazil, that's all companies which have reached such a scale. So obviously that's very interesting for public markets as well with IPOs. So that's a great option to have. If strategic buyers are interested and that's the right exit, that will be decided on a case-to-case basis. So I think the good thing for us, or for all the founders of the ventures, is that the multiple exit routes makes it much easier.
What do you mean multiple exit routes?
Well, we can go, IPO. It could be a sale. We could continue to hold it and make it a dividend business. So it's a lot of different ways.
And how do you feel about going up against local competitors? Like, so Willis mentioned the crocodile, the Yangtze, and one of the big stories in that movie is that Alibaba beats eBay, right? And Jack Ma is like, we're gonna go free, and eBay is not gonna make it. eBay eventually, goes away. So you're kind of facing the same thing here, right? You have a lot of foreigners coming in. You have you want to bring in a global or a foreign way of doing e-commerce, and you're facing people like some of the people who are on stage. So how does that? I mean, how are you going to be able to beat?
It's the honest opinion is that we actually work all quite closely together in some aspects, because you have to see that online retail is 1% of total retail. So we have to educate all together about the way of shopping online.
You mean you and the competitors? Or?
Yeah, it's like we have events together where we promote e-commerce together. I think a good example is we saw obviously the massive success of like the Cyber Monday, the cyber sales in China. So we said, why don't we have this in Indonesia? Literally, having a coffee break. And we said, well, let's just make like a Cyber Monday for Indonesia. And it was the 12th of December 2012. So we said, we invite everyone. So we had with Barry Benker, Pink, Emma, we were like 12 of e-commerce startups, and we promoted on that day. We all made like special deals. We invited the media. We had a common event. So I think we actually have a lot of things together. And if you ask, Jason from Barry Benker or Ivan from Pink Emma, we do actually, quite a lot of stuff together to make people aware about, purchasing things online. So I think, yes, obviously we compete, but in a lot of ways we also collaborate together to make the whole industry bigger.
And they're willing to sit with you and do it.
Of course, it's in all our interest. It's like,
but that's in Indonesia, right? It must be, because I know in Vietnam, it's I live in Vietnam, so it's much more territorial.
Yeah.
Right? It's much more like, oh, Rocket, here comes Rocket, we gotta push them out, right? I don't know what it's like here, but.
I don't. There are probably also more competitive tactical moves for sure. But I can, we meet each other, quite regularly. I think we all focus much more of growing the pie than just dividing the pie at this point. It's a much smarter thing to do.
And so what's next for you in terms of the next five or so years? What are you looking at to be the future of Rocket in terms of investment and then and how the startup ecosystem, because you need everything to grow. Right? So what does it look like for you?
Like our investment thesis, and that's probably we're quite unique in that aspect, is that we really believe in the growth of emerging markets. That you have two mega trends: growth of emerging markets, how they will catch up to the developed world, and that internet is a mega trend which also will last over the next 20 years. So this is our big investment thesis, and that's where we'll have our focus on over the next years, over the next 20 years, for sure.
Well, I think everybody's hungry, so I just want to thank you so much for giving us your time and talking about Rocket. So.